tonight we're here to just talk about permaculture patterns and principles. And so this is, we actually do kind of have a whole weekend on this. And so we're going to condense a lot of information. And our goal for tonight is to just get y'all excited and curious and, just maybe a new lens or two for how we see the world, how we perceive the world, and how we think about our interaction with the natural world, and how much we can actually, how much of an effect we can have as humans on this planet. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. We don't want to say a lot. This is just, I'm Anne.
I'm Lydia.
And so we have, this is sort of our, passion child of our lives work we bring together. And we won't go over this slide too much. Just wanted to give you some information that you can come back to with the link. But we're really passionate about permaculture and human ecology and regenerative design, and specifically all the ways in which we as humans can be maybe we're a problem, but we can also be a solution. And that is a permaculture principle that you will be getting tonight.
That's right. And in our live courses, we do a lot of singing, and we sing because of the way that it really opens up your brain and your heart and your ears and really helps us tune in. And it kind of changes the way you're able to receive information and see the world. And so sometimes people wonder what it has to do with permaculture, but it's actually one of our prime tools for the perspective shift, for preparing you to see the world in a new way.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Next, please. Okay, so just what you're going to leave with here tonight. We like to make it clear. So you're going to have a better understanding, if you don't already have one, the permaculture perspective, super juicy ethics and principles to inform the design process and decision-making.
Key patterns for understanding the natural world and designing regenerative systems.
And then just an introduction into applying one of the key permaculture design tools, which are the zone and sector lenses. And you'll see how that all ties together. And then how you can bring what we even do in this brief period of time tonight into the land you tend, the home that you tend, or your garden or place, or wherever you are. All of the principles, ethics, and these practices can be applied really anywhere, and actually even to our own selves. That's so right. Just keeping that in mind. Okay.
So if this is all new to you, there might be a lot that you just let wash over. And then there's other things where you'll feel really connected, and that'll light you up. And so just let yourself be where you are. We are seeing a couple of familiar faces and a couple of familiar names. So yay, thanks for being here. And go as deep as you're ready.
Okay, so here we go.
Next slide, Allison.
Next slide, please. So we're just going to stay on this one for a little while. We don't ever really use PowerPoints. When COVID hit, we were like, oh no, we really like analog. We like the dirt. We like the soil. We're not so into it. So we really like to, we just like to just so you don't have to be looking at this. You can actually be doodling or just letting, again, like Lydia just said, let just some of the things that we're talking about, just flow over you. So we're just going to start. So this is a picture from one of the gardens that we tend. And, this is our slide for just getting into what is permaculture actually. And then what is this idea of permaculture ethics? So does anybody have, should we do that?
Yeah.
Maybe put into the chat, or if you feel brave and you want to raise your hand, what is permaculture? When you think of permaculture, what do you think of?
Is there a word that comes to mind, or a phrase, or have you already looked it up and you have started learning a definition that you are proud of and want to share?
So whatever again, you can put it in the chat. I'd love to hear. So of course we have our own that we will be giving you. Nothing in the chat. Okay. Really just one word. Like I say permaculture, you say.
Okay, well, we can give you our favorite first, very simple one.
Oh, balance. Okay, here we go.
Balance.
A messy garden.
Oh,
wait.
Yes.
Ron Kane, a messy garden. And a messy garden is what we all need to be really happy about. It's actually what your messy is
are ecologically intact.
Exactly. Self-sustaining. All
nice.
of that. Wonderful.
Yes.
Yes. Yay. Ron. Yay. So this is one of the messy gardens. I mean, people might say this is messy, but actually most of the time with this picture that we're looking at on the screen, when people come into this garden, they're like, whoa. There's fairies. I see fairies. And that's kind of what we're going for. Yes, Nicole.
Natural environment.
The natural environment.
Nice. Yeah.
So permaculture, and you don't have to write any of these things down that you don't want to. We have words on slides that you'll be getting in a PDF afterwards. So again, just if you're doodling or drawing, coexistence.
Good one.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. All of this is wonderful. So,
so one that we really like to start with when people feel a little flummoxed by all of the definitions and things is just work within nature. Just working within nature. It's just seeing ourselves as part of nature, not feeling like we're the humans imposing models or plans or designs on things, but that we're here, we're listening, we're cooperating, we're participating, and we're just facilitating more cooperation, more diversity, more coexistence. And so it's really very holistic and gentle. And that's where a lot of the hard shift is. It's like, it really is very difficult for us to get out of our wanting to do something or make something a certain way and just be in the receiving and in this like co-creative design.
Right. So with the idea, we'll get into some things in just a moment. So let's go. One of the other really nice definitions is that, so it's working with rather than against nature, and that it's, so Bill Mollison said it's, protracted and thoughtful observation, right? Rather than protracted and thoughtless labor. So, and it's looking at plants and animals and in all of their functions, rather than treating any area as a single product system. So again, like all of you said, coexistence, self-sustaining, balance, weaving together. It's the unsiloing of the way that we perceive and receive and interact with our natural environments, right? And that includes us. So we are part of the natural environment and really seeing ourselves in that position. And in that position, we have the potential to make a lot of a really amazing
healing
change and healing.
Yeah. And this word protracted that Anne read, maybe read that again.
So protracted and thoughtful observation rather than protracted, thoughtless labor.
Right. So protracted, if you're not familiar with that word, it really just means lengthy and thoughtful and engaged. So it's about really paying attention to what's already happening rather than just going with like, here's the map or here's the recipe or here's the lawn that I'm going to make just like my neighbors.
Right. So it's about going in with actually being open to figuring something out that maybe your neighbor has never even done or even thought of, because you've been watching and observing, and we'll talk about observation a lot more later. So the choices and the decisions that you're making are really based on this space or the place that you're able to tend.
Yes.
And so to that end, another definition of permaculture by Bill Mollison, he says that permaculture is imagination intensive. Okay, I really want y'all, it's imagination intensive, right? So that it's actually the quality of the thought and the quality of the information, right, that we use to make decisions with how we're going to tend a specific place or land or garden, rather than the size of the place. Or even the quality of that place. It's the quality of our ability to go in with new eyes and be open to new possibilities. So really, really important. And just how beautiful is that permaculture, regenerative design, and all of this gives us that license of imagination. So it's not about, following a recipe or step by step guidelines, right? It's really being open to what the land has to say, and we'll speak more to that.
Yeah. So that makes it so fun and creative, and every site then is totally unique. Even though there's definitely themes, you will recognize the permaculture garden.
Yeah, and we'll get into that more too.
Yeah.
So the last thing we want to keep on this slide, and just look at the slide, look at what you see there, look at how it feels. This slide here is again of a garden that we tend, and it's literally like way more than it's like a 7-layer food forest. And there's so much going on. A lot of these plants were volunteers. A lot of these plants have been over there over the years. They get very little water. So just thinking into that as we're starting to introduce patterns and principles and ethics. Let this slide over you.
There's at least 15 different kinds of plants in this image, and they're all like layered and growing into each other and taking up the space in this really cooperative way. So even though it might look like, whoa, crazy chaos, like it's a very well put together, organically evolved garden scene.
So just be thinking of it. So the last thing we want to bring up on the slide are, so permaculture. So it's all of the things we just said, working with nature rather than against, thoughtful, protected observation, imagination intensive, and it's also a design science, right? So permaculture is all about how can we co-create with our natural environment, all of the things you said, coexistence, balance, something that's self-sustaining. And as a design science, with lots of sciences, there are some ethics that are in play, that come into play. And we're not, I'll write them up in here. So you want to start? Yeah. So our ethics, want to go into those?
So the first ethic is earth care. And, the ethics can seem sort of obvious, but they are worth unpacking. And earth care means we're not extracting or mining things to feed our gardens, and we're not throwing a lot of stuff away that came out of our gardens, that we're really thinking about how can the garden be self-sustaining, self-supporting, connected, contributing, and really integrated with the rest of the environment. So earth care is like respecting all of the plants, all of the animals, all of the organisms, the microscopic organisms, the ones that migrate through and fly over, and really just honoring the place for all of them, the food for all of them, and the cooperative community that they all really need to thrive.
Exactly. So earth care, and then people care. And people care, oh my goodness, it is the hardest one. We are complicated, right? And here's the deal, folks, like in order to do all this amazing work that we all feel called to do, that we're believing that you're all here to learn about and that you feel passionate about like we do, if we can't work with other people, we can't do this all alone. So the people care, it's not just about like, make sure all the people are cared for. Mm-hmm. It's actually people care in the sense of, how do we have groups that are cooperative and collaborative? How can we come to more of this non-divisiveness where we're actually united of what we are a stand for? Yeah. So the people care isn't like, make sure, it is also, but it's not just that. And so, in our permaculture courses and even our hums, it's really about how do we come together with people that we don't know and do this really amazing, totally profound work together. And it is hard because we all, especially now,
stuff, right? And
we all have our stuff.
It can be really easy to judge someone else for the decisions they're making or the way they're living, but how can we all lean in and just respect each other, give each other the benefit of the doubt? We're all starting in the best place. And if somebody has heard of permaculture and they're coming to find out about it, they're open. Their heart is open. Their mind is open.
We're So, and then the last one, fair share.
Fair share, like when you have extra, then you give it away, you share it, you redistribute, just like the trees are sharing all of their oxygen and all of their mulch and all of their food and all of their everything. Like systems of hoarding do not really exist in nature. They're pretty much human constructs. So as soon as you have everything you need or most of what you need, then you begin to share. And then that sets up this relationship of reciprocity that nourishes ongoing.
Exactly. And part of that is also planning for the fair share. So we like to talk about how, we used to try to grow every veggie we wanted in our gardens, right? And so first of all, Lydia here, she's the queen of zooks and cubes, right? Like in the garden, I tend the zooks and cubes, not so good, but my beans and my blueberries and so more of the fruit and the beans and herbs and flowers, no problem. They volunteer, they come back all the time. So we're like, whoa, hey, how about I provide this, you provide that. And if we did that on a community level as much as we could, we don't have to be growing. We want diversity, right? We want diversity, and we want, again, we were listening to the gardens we tend and figured out what likes to grow there, so that the fair share is also not just only about the giving away for free, but really listening to the land and figuring out if you have a garden or place you're tending, what wants to grow there and what's going to grow great, and what can you trade then with other people.
Exactly. Because permaculture, and even this word sustainability or resilience or whatever, it doesn't mean that you have to be providing everything that you need for yourself all of the time. It means you have to be connected in such a way that you can share and you can receive, so that everybody in this wider pattern is getting everything that they need. And it's really fun. Then you're connected, like the people who have chickens, and then they share their eggs, and then you have the berries, and then,
Yeah. So there we go. So those are our ethics. And so these ethics, these are really how every single project, every single design, they become so natural that you're like, okay, is this earth care? Is this people care? Is this fair share? And it's not, if it's not one of those, it's like the question of like, oh, it's not wrong or bad, but why not? Right? Why not? And so our ethics are the ways that in which there may be like a moral compass in a way, or we could say it's our star, our North Star,
guiding light.
This is what we're going for.
Yeah.
So these are broad overreaching. And so now, Allison, you can switch to the next slide. There's gonna be a lot of words on the next slide.
Yep. Next one.
There we go. So we just wanted to share with you tonight.
Some of our favorite principles.
Yeah, there's so many actually. So Bill Mollison, one of the founders of the term permaculture
in the 70s.
So he actually has 26 permaculture design principles, and we didn't want to have a slide with actually 26 principles on there. So we picked some of our favorite, and we're going to talk a bit about these principles and how we use them in permaculture. And while we're doing that, again, be doodling, be looking, and just sort of look at some of these and jot some down. We'd like you to jot down at least one or two or three that resonate with you the most, or that you're most curious about or never have heard about. You want more information. So jot that down and have it ready to go. Okay. So
we really like these. They're a little messy. There's some overlap and some interweaving, but they really speak to people. And we find in our classes that these are the ones that really come out on the tip of the tongue, even though there's other sets that are a little bit more tidy and things like that.
And just to say that most very, very well-known permaculture teachers, I guess, they come up with their own, right? So
they tweak them.
Yeah. So Mollison these are the original ones, 12 of the original ones. And then David Holmgren, who's one of the other founders, so to speak, of permaculture with Bill Mollison, has 12.
He had a set of 12.
He
made fridge magnets and a card deck and things like that. So very, it was a set.
Utilitarian. It was a good thing.
It was a good thing. It doesn't have the same life and vibrancy we found that these do.
Right. So as you're looking at these, you might be like, okay, well, So let's just say some words about what the principles are and how we use them. So if you're going to try, so again, like we said before, permaculture does not provide a recipe unless it's for a lactoserum or something like that. And even then, compost tea, and even then there's some wiggle room, right? So it's not about, 1 to 26, every principle. It's really about, and being familiar with the land or the place that you are in, which of these principles invite, for example, a story or could tell you a story about that place. So our mentor and friend, Hazel Ward, she was the one that really introduced the idea to us that principles, they're not just little saying or phrases. It's a storytelling tool about the land with which we are interacting, right? So it's that. Do you want to speak more to that?
Well, yeah. Just for example, one of our favorites here is make the least change for greatest effect. And so the image that we showed you earlier of the garden, we call that the least change for greatest effect garden. And there's a whole story that goes with why this principle resonates. And the backbone of the story is the seed sharing that happened, right? Do you want to share that?
Wait, the gal that came? Yeah. So years ago, I had a potluck and some woman showed up, very sweet woman who I'd never met before, and I've never seen her again. And she brought me as a hostess guest a bowl of seeds. And I fully said, oh, okay, no problem. I had just made new swales and berms. If you don't know what that is, we'll touch briefly about that later. And so I planted them. And the next thing you know, I ended up with, Doll, you know what scabiosas are? They're a beautiful flower. Beautiful wildflower, but whoa, they all grew up. And then some wild lettuce was all that it was. So so that happened. But what that did was the succession of yearly new scabiosas in this garden have created the new places to plant, the new places to amend, the new places to do. So this one thing happened, and it's laid the foundation for these beautiful twists and turns in the garden that I would never have actually probably imagined just on my own.
Right. And called in so many pollinators, like really jump-started an obsession with pollinators. And so just even here in our telling of this story, we're weaving into succession of evolution, which is another permaculture principle that just refers to how things evolve in a sequence. And so this make the least change for greatest effect. It's like, what can we do that's going to have this huge impact over time, but took very little input or very little energy? And then recognizing that impact over time is going to evolve in this way that we can sort of anticipate, and it's sort of going to be a surprise unraveling and beautiful and different every time. And really just honoring that, understanding that, and then being able to work with that so that we can encourage things to go in a certain direction while respecting and honoring the process.
Yes.
So those were two of our favorites.
Those are two of our favorites. Right, and then you'll see observation here. Oh, and I don't know if you can see. Oh, yeah, you probably can't see
your cursor moving.
The cursor. So if you look at the top left, observation, this is that slow, protracted observation. Permaculture is all about that. If there's no observation that happens, the less observation there is, the more likely that there's going to be something non-ideal.
Right.
That's going to happen.
Energy and materials wasted probably for something that's not particularly ecologically functional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any questions about the principles right now or what we're meeting? If you can either hold up your hand or put into the chat about just permaculture principles and how we use them, if you want some other examples, because we want you to look at these and just sort of be like, oh, this makes sense. Any questions? Okay. So here's what we'd like you to do. So what we'd like you,
do we want to talk about a couple more before?
Well,
okay. Yes.
Well, if there aren't any questions, so just look at all of these. I could just read them, I guess. So observation, we talked edge and ecotones. I guess we talked about the edge and ecotones quickly. So not quickly, but so edge, a lot of people think that edge means it's like the cliff thing, right? But it's actually in permaculture, it's not. So the edge is, or the ecotone. So an ecotone is when two distinct, or maybe even more, right? Two distinct communities or ecosystems overlap, right? That's that ecotone. So then there's the meadow and there's the forest, and then there's the ecotone where the meadow and the forest come together, and where the meadow and the forest overlap is where the most potential is, the most diversity, right? Which is also right to the right. So we're really, that is a principle, is that that means that where are the edges and the ecotones? And if there aren't any, where might we want to create some? Because we know that in the edges and ecotones, that's where it's really juicy. That's where there's a lot of life. There's a lot of interactions of species, of plants and animals and all the rest.
Yeah. So that interaction, that juiciness, all of those relationships that take place in those ecotones, that's what makes everything work. That's where all the support and the resilience comes from. So this thinner your edges are, the less interaction you have, the less relationship you have. So the ecotone is this, people call them the fat edge.
PHAT.
Yeah.
Fat. Yeah. Problem is solution. So Sherry, is that a question about, or are you loving that one? The question about it?
Maybe we should, let's just talk
about it.
Let's
just talk about it. So problem is a solution. And if you want to unmute at some point, just let us know. So problem is solution is one of our favorite ones as well. And one of the first examples we usually give, and we kind of mentioned it earlier, is that a lot of times some people see humans as a problem on the planet. I don't know if that's
It's an easy conclusion to make.
It can be a conclusion. And what we like to say is, it could be. And we are actually, as humans, able to also make the least change for the greatest effect. We're able to create those ecotones. We're able to have a massive impact. So let's use what we have in order to do that. Right. Another problem that is a solution. You want to speak to your favorite?
My favorite.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I always kind of get back to going to the bathroom somehow. So the problem of our poo and our pee and it needing to be cleaned and it going into water and everything is it's a huge energy sink in society. And then we go and we buy fertilizer for our gardens and for our farms and things. And not to minimize any respectable needs to deal with pathogens and whatnot. But if we were not polluting water with our manure and we were using that to nourish our farms and our fields, we've just solved two problems like very quickly and very easily. And all it takes to make that safe and workable is some good design.
Yeah. So really looking at, okay, so here we are, we have some problems. Well, through observation, right? And most of this problem, especially if we're talking about pollution as a problem. Pollution is mostly caused from lack of diversity. Often, right?
Yeah.
So when there's lack of diversity, there's more pollution, there's more waste, there's less, again, edges and ecotones that sort of, facilitate each other's.
Yeah. Everybody using somebody else's waste as their lunch. Like that only works when there's enough everybody's to be eating and participating. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just share what I shared in our small group, which was that I really didn't know what this meant, what intro to permaculture meant, and what was profoundly impactful for me is realizing that the foundational operating principles are analogous to the ones that I was fortunate enough to learn about living in rural northern New Mexico in my 20s, and the resonance of the principles that you shared with those of Indigenous and Hispanic land grant communities in rural northern New Mexico, and how much I learned, like mind-blowing learned as a New England kid. And now I'm wanting to learn about this and figure out how to make a difference in my urban backyard in San Francisco.
Beautiful.
Nice. Beautiful. Thank you for that share.
Yeah. And also, we didn't say that, so we do this more in our permaculture course, but what you're sort of alluding to, right, Deanna, is that, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren really developed these principles and this idea of permaculture, to fit into like this Western model of how we're able to perceive and grasp concepts. But nothing about permaculture that came from Bill Mollison or David Holmgren was new, right?
Yeah,
they didn't discover these ways of being or interacting with the earth. They actually learned so much what has been being already done for eons with so Indigenous peoples around the world. And they both, in their writings, David Holmgren to this day and Bill Mollison to the end, just wanted always for that to be incredibly clear. And we're just going to speak to this just really briefly, but just since you brought up so beautifully, Deanna, is that they needed it to be in a way that we in our white Western culture could grasp. It doesn't make it more valid. It's just that for us to be able to perceive, sometimes if you miss it, you don't even understand what you need to change in your perspective, right? So it's like they put it together in that way. But it was not like, oh, wow, in 1970, this whole new way of interacting with the earth was discovered. Like, no. So let's just say that like right out.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you, Deanna. Yeah, it's we owe it all to what has already been being done for thousands of years and it's still being done all around the world. And we also like to say a lot in our class that just because someone doesn't call something permaculture doesn't mean that it's not. What they're doing is probably around since before the term permaculture was even coined. So just with full respect and acknowledgement of that.
And really the forest was the ultimate model for how systems should operate, that the forest doesn't need anything delivered to it. I mean, it's the rain and the sun and the wind, right? But it doesn't make any waste. It doesn't have to have anything hauled off on Wednesday. It provides for so many different organisms and so many connections and so much resilience. And then with the byproducts of like oxygen and clean air and all of the diversity and fertility that then emerges out from the forest. So it is quite mind-blowing.
Yeah. Great. So great. Thank you for that, Deanna. Anyone else want to be brave, as Deanna said, and just a principle that you saw? Again, you'll be getting these handouts, so you'll have them for yourself. Anyone want to share? I mean, I saw Nicole, you put in diversity. Observation to me means spiritual connection and creating something everyone can enjoy. Yeah. And observation, that's such a beautiful point with the spiritual connection. Observation, yeah. It is, you really can't connect unless you find the time to observe, right? When we're not observing, we can't connect. We're not slowing down enough. Right. In our mass culture, we're just like, it's hard to connect. Observation really means just sitting down.
Yeah.
Taking it out. Sit spots, Ron.
Thanks,
yes.
Ron.
So good to have you on, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in our course too, Ron was part of the very first PDC ever in Solano County. And we did sit spots. And that's this idea that, taking observation as that principle to heart, and sitting out in nature without our beloved four-legged friends, without our beloved devices. We get out on wherever we are and just breathe and listen and even taste and feel and hear and touch, what's happening. So these are, the observation and the sit spots, as we're just doing briefly, and diversity, absolutely, and the edge. All of these, this really is what, in a way, sets apart what we're doing with permaculture, regenerative design, or whatever, apart from the monoculture, from big ag, right? It's the slowing down and listening. So we're going to move into the patterns. So we've talked now about the principles. We're going to spend about, I don't know if we'll get into, we'll at the end, we'll do, but so just you can just read this. You want to read it, Lynn?
Yeah. Learning a master pattern is very like learning a principle. It may be applicable over a wide range of phenomena, some complex and some simple. So we're just sort of expounding on these, this sort of verbal principles and these ideas and these stories. And we're kind of taking it into something that's more kind of visual, or that unfolds over time. And really understanding, like, patterns give us so much information, and they tell us what's happening and what's going to happen next.
Great. So then let's go to the next slide, Alice. Here we go. So, and then David Holmgren, who we also mentioned, he had this is one of his principles. So the ones we showed you are pretty much for Bill Mollison, but one of his was design from patterns to detail. And again, you can't see patterns unless you've taken the time to observe, right? So we just thought this is a really beautiful example of several patterns in nature. This is a picture from the Green School in Bali. And you can see how, it's not your typical garden, and not even big ag, but not your typical backyard garden. It's incorporating so much curve,
a lot of edges,
and a lot of edges. Sorry that we're not able to share. We can't share a thing, but it's just look and see all the edges there. Look and see what diversity you find, what ecotones might be existing. And just think how, for us, we look at a picture like this and it's like,
feels so good.
I really want to be there right now.
Yeah.
I love where I am too. But so part of permaculture too is creating spaces, and not just spaces for the current and the present, but spaces for the future that we all want to be part of. And understanding, again, that principle of succession of evolution, that, we might not ever see the absolute peak crescendo of a garden that we're tending now. It might come in 50 years or 60 years, but nonetheless, it's not going to stop us. We don't have to be the beneficiaries of that. Right. We just can get the joy out of knowing that, we're planting this today, and how many generations forward are going to reap that, and what it's going to look like. Yeah.
Just notice, like, there's a river running around the back, and there's a little bridge going over there, and there's all these different kind of mulch materials and edging materials and different kinds of plants, like so much diversity. And they must have just used different things they found around. And then imagine through time, like sometimes that river might flood and go over this zone, and sometimes it might drop down really low. And what is that going to do?
Yeah. So we're going to show you 3 of our favorite patterns. And so Allison, just skip through the words and go to the pictures. And we'll just talk through. Yes. Thank you. So the first and one of our most favorite patterns is a meander, right? The word to me feels slowing. It feels comfortable. Right. It feels, there's not meanders. There's not a lot of like raging. It's not a raging river. It's a meander.
Not a speed race or anything.
It's like the word saunter, right? It's like this, like, you're getting somewhere, but
meandering gives you lots of time to look around and observe and appreciate and interact with all the different things you're going by. And you have this opportunity to pick things up and to put things down, right? So it's, picking up and depositing in all kinds of different ways.
I really wish we could have our little arrow on here. But if you look at, so just think about this particular river. When there's a lot of water that comes into it, all of those curves and things that are happening, they slow it down.
That's right.
Right. So meander it's about flow, but also function. And also there's not erosion happening.
Exactly.
There's not erosion happening. All these tight little bends. I don't know, Allison, if you can just like the lower, there you go, right there.
Nice.
They can turn into little islands. Those are the oxbows. So there's, so eventually, right, like right there, the river might connect and then this part gets left out, and then like a little island or a little landmass forms there
with a little curvy crescent shaped
and what's
pool around it.
And what's so beautiful is that little bit of land is going to be probably quite rich in nutrients, right? Because the river has meandered, it's sauntered down, and it's dropped organic matter, it's dropped nutrients and different minerals, and then closes off, and then that becomes its own ecosystem.
Totally new habitat in that little oxbow lake. Like now it's still water. It's a nursery for all kinds of fish and invertebrates, and different kinds of plants are going to be able to grow there. Their seeds and their larvae were deposited by the river. So it's creating this massive, diverse system.
And then does anyone want to just say, I know we understand that some of you are just getting introduced to the principles, but based on everything we just said about a meander, if you could just type in the chat, is there a principle that you're like, oh, that's this one?
I see it here.
We would love it. Just if you could put that in the chat. And if you don't, that's okay. If you feel shy, there is no wrong answer, by the way. Haha. You will not be made to support your claim here. We're just curious. We're just wanting you to be curious and interactive and not have it just be us. Anything? Some moments. Okay, well, should we say some? Nobody has anything? Brave? Y'all so brave. Okay, well, we are going to just let you know. We'll rattle them off. You could
we got evolution.
Succession of evolution. Nicole,
things really change.
Things change over time, right? So the way the river flows changes, and it's of its own accord. So when we dam rivers, when we reshape them, or when we make them straight, right? If this were straight, none of the little deposits are going to be happening. There's not going to be the flow. There's not going to be the other principle, which is diversity. Right. And the ecotone, if you look around each of these meanders, I keep trying to show you with the arrow. There's these little green patches. Those little green patches in between, they're the ecotones, right? Between the water and the curve and the land and the habitat there. Anyway, so you get that. So a meander.
Yes, meander.
So meander is one of a permaculture's many favorite patterns,
Right.
one of ours.
And just to think about how you could apply the meander in a design, what about the way that you make your pathways? And if people can just walk a straight line from one side of the site to the other side of the site, they didn't really get to interact. They didn't really get to observe. But if the pathway meanders and takes you past all these cool things and the beautiful smelling, chocolate smelling sunflower and the strawberries and the blueberries and the place where there's the little nest and everybody can see the baby birds, then you're really inviting people to just sink in
and slow down.
And
then they get, little kids love this kind of stuff. You make a little meander, or you make like a little hideaway, then the kitty cats want to go there, the doggies want to go there, the kids and we actually want to go there too. Maybe we don't admit it, but so making a meandering path allows you to have more beautiful little pockets for your sit spot, as Ron mentioned, or for a place for you just to observe. So meanders.
Thinking about even just as far as traffic is concerned, when people are speeding and there's been a lot of accidents, then you put in the traffic calming devices and people have to do a little bit of slowing down to move around them.
Exactly.
Very lovely pattern.
So thank you, Nicole, for that. So definitely succession of evolution, edge and ecotone, and the least change for the greatest effect. I mean, it's really like these, anyway, we'll keep going. So we're just going to plant those seeds with you. So our next pattern, again, thank you, Allison. So this is dendritic. This is a dendritic pattern.
Nice and branchy.
Nice and branchy. So you'll see the dendritic patterns. So this is streams
and trees.
Well, I was going to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You're so good.
I really want to talk about trees.
So, looking at this pattern, if you could put in the chat, like what other places do you see this type of and this is drainage. It doesn't have to be, just be dendritic pattern. Like what other places in nature do you see this type of pattern? Something that starts small and opens up again.
Leaf. Good one.
Yes, a leaf. Absolutely.
The veins in a leaf. Yes, the roots.
The roots. Yeah. Anything else? Any other? Let's see. Neurons. LOL.
Oh, yeah.
The delta. Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, placenta. Like, seriously, right? Your lungs. These are all. And so this is all about. So the dendritic pattern is actually it's designing for distribution.
Yeah.
So dendritic is about distribution and equal distribution and a range of distribution that is regenerative.
Yeah. And conversely, it's also about gathering in. So it kind of gathers in and then it redistributes. So it's very beautiful. Oh, nice. Somebody put Deanna.
Mycelium. Yes, y'all.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's drawing things from the far reaches and then redistributing them back out to the far reaches, transformed after they've been through whatever physiological, ecological processes are taking place in there.
Yeah. So we love the dendritic. What else? So based on what we just said, are there any principles, any stories about the dendritic pattern that you could see could be brought about from the different principles we mentioned? And take a moment. Let's see. Okay. Well, in the interest of time, we understand that it's awkward, y'all. We love that we're all here. We get to be in all our different places. And
Zoom has its challenges.
It does. Yes. So we'll just say, so part of it is one of the ones we didn't talk about so much is every function is supported by many elements. So a function being like distribution, like a verb, and then the elements are the nouns, right? So the function of this bringing together and redistributing, right, is supported by
the redundancy of each little streamlet, is supporting all this similar function.
But also the plant life that comes in between that serves as filters, whether it's trees, whether it's the shrubs or the different plants that are part of the different waterways that are slowing, spreading, probably they're a beaver, the beavers love dendritic patterns. They create them. Actually,
they get right up in there and slow it down.
That's right.
Make it branch off in different directions.
Okay. So anything more to say about that? So this is again, we talked about branching. We talked, I know about energy.
Yeah.
So this is, if we're talking about leaves and trees and even waterways, it's about energy. release and bringing together. I think that you were saying around flow. But if we look at this even in the form of, and we won't go so much into it now, but dendritic patterns are really important when you're looking at trees and you're going to want to be doing some pruning. Actually, you're same with your tomatoes, actually, same with lots of different things that you're wanting to sort of trim up and help the energy flow. So then pruning has a lot to.
That's right. So which ones of those little branches can you cut out because they're not healthy or they're not going in the direction that you can support them long term? And which ones do you want to encourage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So dendritic patterning is super important for permaculture. And let's see, this brings up the principles of diversity. And yeah, like we said, every function is supported by many elements, and also probably succession.
Yeah, definitely. Succession revolution. There's a different quality to each one of these little orders on these branches.
Seasonal. Yeah.
These are also great pathway design as well to help you get from a main zone out into all of the different little peripheral places.
Yeah. And we're going to show you some examples in just a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the last pattern. So these are just 3. Okay. So again, we're going to want, so Allison, you kind of know what we're going to say. We'd love to have our little arrow. So yeah, why don't we start here with this keyhole bed? Start with the one you just had. Sorry, Allison. So the keyhole bed, or it's a keyhole or a sun trap. So what we're talking about here, so keyhole, like just notice if you're in the olden days when there were the keys that the keyhole looked like this, right? And the little big, huge, key went in.
Old school,
right? So a keyhole bed is, again, it's something that happens in nature. People don't really think about it so much that way. They're like, because as you see in this example here, which we love, people have taken some really beautiful stones, likely that they got from on site, and they've created the boundaries for it. But if you think about what a keyhole is, notice the tree in the middle. This whole pattern happens naturally just from leaves dropping, right? From the way the water falls, and then from the way that different animals are going to come through and burrow through, or make their little I'm blanking right now. They're little, not their nests, but their burrows. Yeah. Exactly. They're little burrows. Right. And so there's ways that keyholes happen because there's going to be a coming and going from the tree. There's going to, for the different types of fruit or the food or the leaves or the water or or, imagine if this tree here in the middle were a much bigger tree, and it fell down and it fell out towards us, and the rest was a forest, but that break right there allowed all of this sun to come in and this new growth to sprout out where it hadn't before. So a keyhole is definitely a pattern that just repeats itself in nature that we as humans have the ability to create with and use. And we use it a lot. We do. We love it. Yeah. It's one of our favorite patterns.
And just to elaborate on Anne's example, where the tree fell down, where that root ball came up, it's going to leave a little bowl, like a depression, an area where the material got pulled out, and that's going to gather in water and all these other kinds of things. And so you have like the positive space keyhole and then the negative space keyhole, and they can almost coexist on top of each other, gathering and holding different kinds of things like water, like leaf litter, like warmth, right? If you, do you want to show the sun trap one?
Yeah. Can we go back to the other one, Allison? I did want to say, so take a look at these 2 examples, the perennial edible sun trap. This is from David Holgram. Toby Hemingway's book. So some nice designs, and you can start to see, what did you ask me if I wanted to say?
Just about the sun trap, like holding the heat.
Oh yeah. So notice on the image on the bottom, south is, whatever, kind of to the left. So this whole garden here has been designed for the sun to go across it the whole time.
And shine on it.
And so notice how the other really cool thing about the keyhole bed is you get more planting area than you do if you made just straight rows, right? So notice you have pathways in, and then all around it is all planting.
That's right.
So you are able to have more diversity, more lushness, more green, and more of everything supporting each other. That's all of the elements, all the functions, all of that happening.
With all of this access still for you, you can walk in and get within a few feet of every element in this whole design from the pathways, while the pathways are staying the very smallest volume that they can possibly be. so it's all can be planting.
Right. So it's definitely a way to conserve space. So if you have a small space and you want a lot of planting area, but you want to have access to it, a keyhole design is going to be your optimum for you. And, we tend to, we'll show you some, I think we have a couple pictures of a keyhole. We'll show you some, we don't tend to make the walls around it necessarily, but we
keep them more soft. And just back to what Anne was saying about the sun shining in from the left on this lower image, notice how tall the trees are on the back. And so as the sun shines in, they're going to hold that heat. They're going to slow down the wind. And if you have this on a mini scale, like Anne's got several in the garden that she tends here, the cats love that beautiful central warm spot.
And the dogs exactly where to go. Dogs visiting. We don't have. I don't have a dog, but dog friends who come and visit, they're like, oh, because it's a great observation. You kind of can't be seen, but you can see everything, and then it is warm or it is cooler, depending. So
the plants that need that protection and that warmth, you can put right there in the edges, and then you can walk right in and just enjoy them, harvest from them. Give them a little extra love, whatever exchange needs to happen. So aren't those fun? Aren't those beautiful images?
So, and so does anyone have, again, just of these patterns, what principles you might see in play here, if you could put them in the chat? So we have some on hand, but we could, let's see, work within nature. Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. And then what about location? Location. So work within nature, and then relative location was another one of our very favorite principles, and edges. Yes, edges, Nicole Newell, definitely. So actually keyhole pattern is the ultimate in creating ecotones and edges, because look how much there is there. There's so room for interaction. There's so much for engagement. But also, like, the problem is the solution. So for example, if your problem is you don't really have a lot of space, well, then you use that tiny bit of space you have to create a keyhole, which is going to give you more space to grow. And then with that more space to grow, if it's growing together and it has that, you're changing your microclimate, you need less water, you need less resources. It's all supporting each other. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Allison.
Yes, beautiful.
Either one. So any questions about these? So any questions about, so these are just 3 patterns. There are so many patterns. And what we would do is invite you to actually just look around, think of your own patterns. Think of the patterns in, of a natural place that you go to, either one that you tend yourself or that you engage with, and the patterns, we'll talk about some more specific patterns, but you're really wanting to look at, there's so many more patterns as this. These are just the 3 of our favorite. Should we just go into because we only have.
Yeah, well, just as, Anne keeps saying there's so many more, like from that quotation that we read from Bill Mollison in the beginning, they're applicable over a wide range of phenomenon and scales, right? So they can be huge, and then they'll have all of these sub patterns within them, or you can just be looking at a very small example. But out in the world, all these patterns are being affected by all of the different energies around them all the time. So they get squished and morphed and manipulated. And so for us to start simple and help you see those kind of essential core patterns, then you'll be able to really observe how they work together in nature, and they're compounded and they're twisted into each other, and you start to be able to unpack that. And that's really fun.
It really is.
Yeah.
So any questions about that before we move into just an example of how to take this idea of principles and patterns and combine it into one of the most used permaculture design tools.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And then we're going to probably go a little bit over 7:45. Is that okay?
Because that's question.
That's just for question. There don't seem to be burning questions, so it seems like it's okay for us to do. Just we agreed. Okay, so we talked about principles. We've given you some basic patterns. So as we said before, permaculture is a design science, right? And so a lot of it, what is for us, is we really want people to get people inspired with their own imagination. Like we said, like permaculture is imagination intensive. We have to be able to imagine the future that we all want to be part of, that we want the people that we love to be part of. And in order to do that, we have to put intention into it. So we actually have to design, right? So we're going to just introduce you to this tool right now. You can go to the next slide. Oh, you can go back. Wait, actually go back for a second. Sorry, but to the kitty cat one. Oh, thank you, Allison. No problem. That was a little preview. Was that fun? That was like the trailer for what's coming next. So if you look at this picture, so this is our cat, Tillman, and what principle do you see him engaged in right now? Anyone want to? He's observing. But if you look ahead of him, it's kind of messy right now because it's after the summer, but that's a keyhole bed that was planted. That was part of what that woman that gave me all the scabbies, this hole, notice a little hole in the middle here. Oops, no, there you go. Hole in the middle. Yeah, right there. That's a little keyhole. And this all got planted. And so basically at this point, it barely gets water. There is irrigation. Most of the things that come back every year on their own, including comfrey, now fennel, penstemons, the red-veined mallow,
bunch of different kinds of salvias.
The different salvias. There's Clarkia flowers. There's
little native heucheras,
columbines, everything. And there's not much that has to happen. So again, just to say, part of what for myself, for the garden that I tend and we do tend together, like I need a garden of least change for greatest effect because we're out in the world working with other people's gardens. And so creating a garden like this, there's not much to do at the end of the day, except be just super stoked that you get to go sort of have some downtime there. So we just wanted to point this out. It's just, there's like the super clean keyhole and then there's the keyhole after 6 years. Yeah. What it looks like and how it's used not only by us as humans, but all of the other friends and birds.
And this is magic. If you sit where that cat is on a summer afternoon, this whole swath, the whole keyhole there is just moving, bumping and bouncing and buzzing with different kinds of pollinators, all different kinds of bees, butterflies and flies and beetles and everybody.
Yeah. They all come back. They know it's there. So
it's a party.
Yeah.
And they bring the birds.
They do bring the birds.
Yeah.
So I do leave my cats inside, by the way, when it's bird time for the most part. If I'm home, I love
the responsible.
I try
cat owner,
my very best,
protecting the bird life.
In any case, let's move on now. So we're going to teach you what gets your feet wet for this design lens. You're going to go to the next slide. So the design lens. This is fine, right? Or we want to not talk about? Okay, no, yeah, there you go. So zones. Well, so we're going to talk about two things in the period in the time we have, but we just let this wash over you. Just sort of, you could even close your eyes. You don't necessarily have to look at this picture right now. So there's this design tool. There's two, and it's called zone and sector analysis. And again, you're going to get the PDFs with these slides. So zones and sectors, you really can only figure them out through observation, right? Which we've made that point. So a zone, and both a zone and a sector, they're both patterns. So the zones are your patterns of use, right? Your patterns of tending. And they're the patterns of energy that you put in to a particular place or an activity or whatever. And there is also energy that you receive back. So the zone is, where are you most often?
Yes.
Where do you need to be most often? And
where do you spend your time?
Exactly. Where are you spending your time and energy? Do we want to go into this?
Well, just incidentally, please notice the cool keyhole beds that are in this design. And aren't those awesome to see kind of on a larger scale integrated in with all these other elements? That is cool.
Yeah. And notice how, again, imagine if these were all just straight lines, how much less space there would be for habitat and for plants and for growing food, if that is your goal.
Yeah.
So we want to point out, Allison, if you don't mind helping us out here, if you can see the zones 1, 2, 3, and 4. So zones again, so this is patterns of use, patterns of tending, patterns of energy. If you look at the bottom left, there's these circles. So just forget about that, okay? Because
it's oversimplified.
It's very rare that your zones of use are that linear, or I mean, in this case, they're circular, concentric, but it is it's like, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, because, and if you look at this picture, however, it does actually show you that. So your house is generally like your zone 0, or it could be your zone 1. That's right there. Thanks.
Where you wake up in the morning.
Where you wake up, this is where you are spending most of your time. Maybe you have your houseplants right there. And then if you look out zone 1 to the right, it says it's flowers, herbs, intensive garden beds, zone 1. See how it's right off the patio, right off the house. So this is a place where you're spending a lot of time. You're putting a lot of energy into. You're
enjoying it.
You're enjoying it. You're watering it. You're harvesting from it. All of that. So that's your zone 1. And then I guess, if we look at this long keyhole that looks like it might be the entryway, actually, that they put keyholes into. So a path to the front of your house. That one right there. Yeah, Allison, that would also be a zone 1.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you park at the end of that and you walk up, and you're going up and down that like once or twice a day, depending on how often you leave your house. So it's not about the concentric circles. It's about the paths you walk, where you go, and where you're spending your time. So then if you look at the zone 2 there, shrubs, bamboo berries. Yeah. So they're not quite as close. You're going to go out there, you're going to take a peek at them, you're going to tend them, but it's not as needed so much. So
maybe a couple times a week you would hit up that zone 2, but the zone 1, you're just every day, maybe multiple hours a day.
Yeah.
So really looking, you can look at your own home and just say, where do I spend my most time? Okay, those are my zone 1s.
Right. And maybe there's a part of a place that you're attending and you're like, I wish I could hang out there more. Well, why not? Right. You can actually change your zone patterns. You can change those patterns just like we can. They're not always easy to change our patterns, but it's possible. Yeah. And so just to start to envision, what would it be like if I created a cool place under that tree where it's much cooler in the summer? Like a lot of people have their tables in their gardens, like out in like beating
really not a nice place.
Sun, like on the concrete and the hardscaping, and it's hot. Right. Well, what about if you put a table in a cooler spot where you are not like sweating every time you're out there, right?
And noticing that different times a year might be nice to have the table in different places, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the nicest gifts about this that you get right away is noticing if there is an area, like Anne's saying, where this near your house that you're not spending time in. Well, why is that? That's a missed opportunity. And what can you do there to make that a place that invites you in, that you want to spend time with? Because it's right there.
Right. So just to take that in, so you can change your zones. The zone 3 over there, all the way to the left, you see, this says fruit and nut trees, crafts, and firewood. So for myself, that would be more of a zone 2 for me. I think the only reason that the zone 2, like for me, like the berries, if it's berry season, I'm going out there.
That's your zone 1. If it's berry season.
If it's berry season, I got to get out there before everybody else does. So the zone 3, the fruit trees, the nut trees, crafts, and firewood. So again, like in the winter, I guess that would be more of my zone 3. I'm not really getting firewood. There's not a lot of fruit on my trees right now. So again, like so many things, your zones can also change from season to season. So again, we're wanting to look at our patterns of movement in the spaces that we tend to see how we can best integrate ourselves, and also how we best integrate ourselves in our interactions with the nature around us. And we can do that best by noticing patterns and by really engaging with some of these prime principles that we've mentioned.
And we hope that it's coming across like these patterns are not just spatial physical patterns. They really unfold over time. So being able to think that, like, add that extra dimension of time to your understanding of patterns, because things really do change throughout the day and throughout the year. And us understanding that helps us design things so that works, so it fits, it enhances, and doesn't kind of fight against.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then zones go together with
this last piece we want to offer you
with sectors. Okay, so this might seem confusing, but let us try to. It's really difficult. We need to make our own graphic for this. Okay. This is beautiful. So sectors. So while zones are patterns of use, sectors are more patterns of energy. Yeah. So this is patterns of. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. You're going to.
Sure. Yeah. The sectors are these energies from the outside coming in, influencing the site, influencing the home, influencing the garden. And, like Anne was saying, the zones are from within. We have our energy that radiates outward. And then the sectors are the energies kind of coming into us, pressing in, things that we might really want, like a cool breeze or a warm sunny day, or things that maybe we don't want, a cold icy wind, or the noise from the liquor store parking lot across the street, or whatever it might be. So understanding, making yourself some kind of little graphic like this where you can visually see where things are coming from and how they're affecting you. Then you can overlay that with your zones and understand, oh, the reason why I don't hang out in that space that's really close to my patio is because there's a super bright light at night. I can hear my neighbors fighting and it smells like somebody's garbage, So,
right. So how do you,
not fun.
Right. So plant a beautiful hedge, something that smells good, something that either blocks the sun or the wind. So figuring out these patterns, these are wind patterns, sun patterns, shade patterns, animal movement patterns, and understanding where those are exactly, Allison. So here you have the winter winds, the summer winds are to the left, the winter winds are to the right. You have your house. And so there's a wildlife corridor. That's the green up kind of on to the, right there to the north. You've got a beautiful view here, it looks like. So a view is a sector, right? Because it's a pattern of, and maybe that's where your eyes
something
are drawn.
That you want.
That's something that you want. Yeah, exactly. So sectors and zones are essential. And actually we would say pretty much every permaculture class starts out with this, starting to familiarize ourselves with zones and sectors, because we can't really design optimally anything that's going to be really well functioning without having been to where we are in the first place. I mean, we use as an example in Santa Cruz is because, this little beach town and like somebody buys some big property and then some, then some new house gets built and we're like, oh, haha, that architect was never once on this site because the big, huge view window is facing, 6 feet from the house next door. Yeah. Right. So it looked really great on paper, but no one was there. No one saw the neighbors' homes. No one, that was not planned with it in mind. And so we don't ever want to get caught as permaculturists, as designers, as lovers of the earth, having designed something. We recently got asked to do a workshop doing stream restoration for a place. So this is not just about where we had never been. And they get us on the phone and they're like, oh, so what's your plan? And we're like,
we're coming to visit.
We're coming to visit because we need to actually come and see the creek, see the land, meet the people. So again, zone and sectors. And when we did that, it was important to know, okay, here are the different places where the people are. Here are the different types of sectors that we're looking at. Then we could start to get an idea, but we don't ever want to get caught in a position where we want to propose a design of something without having really getting our fingers in the dirt or our feet wet or
There's totally stuff you can do with Google Earth and being online, but there is never anything that can beat actually being there in person and just feeling the wind and seeing the evidence of the water or the erosion or the wildlife. It's just something you cannot skip.
So what we're hoping that this does for us, so this is just a beautiful garden. It looks like Starhawk, who is a wonderful human being, activist, permaculturist, which, just look at this garden and think about what are the patterns that you see? What types of zones and sectors? How is it different from your, everyday garden or place that you might see? And I guess that's our invitation, right? So if we were to put it all together, permaculture really, as a design science, the message is really to slow down. If we could, is to really slow down, engage all of our senses and to really connect and really learn. Our friend recently, Karen, was talking about the biography of the land. What does this land have to say? What does this land want to grow? What hasn't grown successfully in the past? And how can we create those ecotones, maybe sometimes between what maybe some humans might want, but what the land is actually capable of and wants itself.
And what are the missed opportunities? I feel like that's come up multiple times today and keeps pointing out missed opportunities. Like, where can you use your hands and your creativity and your imagination to really bring in more opportunities?
Yeah.